Welcome everyone to my English presentation, my English research presentation for 232 um, on prominent activist artists. I'm basically going to be doing an analysis of some of the key figures in the space, artists that uh, showcase elements of protest in their artwork. So let's get started. So the first artist we are going to be looking at is Nicki Najumi. Najumi is a Brooklyn-based artist whose works have underlying socio-political themes. The Iran-born artist graduated from Tehran University with a bachelor's degree in art in 1960. After voyaging to America in 1969, Najumi continued his education in art at the City College of New York, earning his master's degree in fine arts in 1974. By 1975, he began venturing back to Iran yearly to showcase his art, which was frowned upon by Persian royalty and authority. The artist is a strong believer in the inevitable corruption of people once they get a taste of power. So basically, he's basically believes that anybody who becomes a leader of a country or gains some kind of role similar to an emperor or president, they will abuse their power, and yeah. He tries to showcase that a lot in his own works, and it's one of the themes that he tends to gravitate towards to kind of expose Iranian and American leadership. One of his more notable solo expositions was in Iran at the Tehran Museum. It was inevitably shut down by authority uh, due to his content being politically unaccepted by higher powers in the regime. Um, it was actually shut down by Ayatollah Khomeini, um, who had overthrown Pahlavi in 1979, and the regime kind of evolved into this conservative theocracy from then. Um, so yeah, he stopped making his yearly uh, ventures off to Iran after this incident. To the right here is one of Nicki Najumi's works, Long Live Freedom. Um, he was working in print making at the time, so that's the medium. Um, it was made for a leftist group in 1978. Um, it was basically a protest for the Shah's wrongful imprisonment for those that opposed official policy, also known as dissidents. So basically, these people that would speak out and didn't agree with the authoritarian figures would be imprisoned, um, which went against all kinds of guidelines, like worldly guidelines. Um, yeah, in the theocracy. Depicted in this image, we have a gagged inmate. Uh, can't really picture if it's a man or woman, but uh, because of all the cross hatching and wild shading going on. But across from him, uh, he's being threatened with this blade about half the upward length of his head. Um, and yeah, it's just basically bringing awareness to this wild systemic issue going on. The next artist that we'll be going over is Yoko Ono. She's a more popular one. You may have heard of her. She's a multimedia artist known for being the wife and widow of critically acclaimed musician John Lennon. She participated in the Bed-Ins for peace movement, in which she nonviolently protested the Vietnam War from the comfort of a Hilton hotel in Amsterdam. Later on, she would become recognized as one of the most successful dance club artists of all time. I think it was 11th, to my knowledge. After building an admirable amount of credibility through her Plastic Ono band and collaborative projects with her late husband before his passing. Here we are going to be looking at one of her more early works, which is Cut Piece, and it's a performance art project which she's performed multiple times over the years, but her first performance was on July 20th of 1964. And basically in this performance, she's on stage and she has a real straight face, and she's just sitting down, kind of on her knees, and basically people from the audience each come up one at a time and cut slivers of her clothes off with a pair of scissors that is lying next to her. They basically, the people in the audience have the freedom to come up and take however much of her clothes off as they want with these scissors, and basically they take these fragments of her apparel, I guess, home with them if they choose to. But it's intended to be against ageism, against racism, against sexism, and against violence. Later, she talked about how when she first did it, she did it with this kind of anger within her, because she wasn't really necessarily doing it with pure intentions. She had this, anger built up on these topics. She was so passionate about these sexist beliefs she had, and wanted to protest this through this art form. But basically this was her kind of way of translating it. And later on, she said that now she performs it in an act of a symbol of world peace. So in 2003, when she did it, she had more those pure intentions that I guess she was really aiming for. So yeah, it was adopted by feminists, and it became one of the most notable works in the feminist art movement, and her little niche community of artists in New York. So yeah. Throughout the video of this performance that we have here, Yoko Ono keeps such a straight face and strays away from showing any kind of emotion. If she is showing any of emotion, it is kind of showing that she's uncomfortable, and almost as if she's being taken advantage of by the members of the audience. And the members of the audience, you can hear them cackling. You can hear them making comments about her facial expressions. And at one point, near the end, one of the members of the audience kind of gets carried away and cuts off her whole top and bra straps, and almost in a humorous way. Well, at least he thought he was being funny, and members of the audience called him names, called him a cornball, but Yoko Ono proceeds to cover up her breasts so that she isn't exposed. and she stays in this very serious mode, just showcased here. Here's an excerpt from Cut Piece.
That's the expression on her face.
Get carried away.
Next, we'll be looking at Nancy Golden. She's more popularly known as Nan Golden. She's an American photographer known for her documentation of the gay and transgender community. Following the tragic suicide of her 19-year-old sister, Golden aimed to capture subjects that were misfits, much like that of her sister. Later in life, she was dangerously addicted to Oxycontin after building a dependence on her prescription for a wrist injury that she had suffered. Now she uses her platform and status to protest against issues she associates with or advocates for. So, as a result of her passionate feelings on prescription medication in relation to addiction, we get this 2018 protest where she's protesting drug money essentially being used to fund museums. So here protesters demonstrated a quote-unquote die-in, right, where basically at least 30 of them lied on their backs and acted as if they were victims of overdose from these prescription medications, such as Oxycontin. Pill bottles and stained dollar bills were littered throughout the museum. It was against the funding of museums by the Sackler family in particular, who owns one of the largest opiate distribution companies in the world. And she led it and she organized it through her organization that she's created through protests. Here is a clip of the protest.
200,000! 200,000! 200,000! The Sacklers!
Made billions!
Made billions!
Pushing their pills!
Pushing their bills!
On the deaths of 200,000!
On the deaths of 200,000!
Sacklers lie!
Sacklers lie!
Thousands die!
Thousands die!
Sacklers live!
Many of you may already know this guy, Andy Warhol, iconic figure in the pop art scene in the 80s. But many think of Campbell's soup cans and Marilyn Monroe when they hear his name. But many forget about the extensive promotion of unorthodox sexuality in his work. Always beating around the bush about his own sexuality in the public realm, Warhol quickly became a pioneer in the gay community through his public posthumous diaries. So after he passed away, I believe in 1985, there was a book released with all of his daily journal entries, and from the 60s to his death, they were documented over the phone by one of his transcriptionists, and it almost kind of shocked the world due to its real explicit contents about, having feelings about men as a man, and as a real iconic male figure. So yeah, he kind of led the way and was the voice for a lot of gays from that moment to the present. So the normalization of this unorthodox way of presenting yourself as a man is shown in his Ladies and Gentlemen series. It's a pop art series commissioned for the purpose of making images that depict unnamed transvestites. So at the time they were unnamed, but by 2014, 13 of the subjects were then named. Back then, he had received some backlash for only paying his subjects. I think it was around like $50 to $100. And because of his fame and fortune, this was kind of seen as inappropriate, I guess. But these images eventually, the Polaroid images turned into these silkscreen paintings that became staple pieces of his collection and portfolio. I thought I'd also share here to end it off some images, self-portraits, they're Polaroids, of Andy Warhol dressing in drag. These images were somewhat shocking, I guess, when they came out, but they acted kind of as this mechanism for the gay community to relate to, and people could translate their own sexuality and relate to it through these images, and I guess pursue their own desires just by seeing this. A lot of them were very sheltered and unopen about their sexuality back then due to the legal issues going on around then regarding same-sex marriage and such. But these pictures and the Ladies and Gentlemen series were just a couple examples of, him not only exploring his own sexuality, but doing it in a public manner so that people in the LGBTQ community could see it for themselves and relate. Thank you guys for watching my presentation.